Hello, everybody. I'm Ron Seyb, professor of political science here at Skidmore College, and thank you for joining me for a string of lectures that I'm calling my last waltz or my valedictory, or perhaps writing my own eulogy. Today's topic is the Electoral College system, which I think for most Americans is confusing, infuriating, and exasperating. As my favorite social commentator, Ferris Bueller, once observed, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. There is, however, in American politics, one exception to this iron law of Bueller. The Electoral College system for choosing our president seems to be the paradigmatic, immovable object. No other democracy uses the Electoral College system to choose its chief executive. Even what is the Electoral College system eludes most Americans. The Electoral College system is an artifact of 18th century concerns about the people's capacity to govern themselves. This statement may strike you as discordant. It is certainly fair to ask why people like George Washington, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton, all of whom subscribe to what we now call Enlightenment principles of popular rule, individual liberties, and equality, would design a system for choosing the chief executive that allowed state legislators to, for all intents and purposes, determine the winner of presidential elections. The answer is that, as my Tufts University colleague Vicki Sullivan recently wrote, the writers of our Constitution understood that, quote, a republic is fragile, primarily because citizens and leaders become complacent to the designs of exceptionally ambitious citizens, among them who harbor the desire to rule alone. In short, the Electoral College system's principal function was to reduce the possibility that a demagogic or authoritarian candidate would seduce the people by manipulating and exploiting their emotions. As measured by this standard, the Electoral College has arguably failed. This is not, however, the fault of its designers. In the 1820s, almost all states shifted the choice of electors from state legislators to voters. The consequence of this shift is that we now have 50 separate popular elections for the presidency, one in each state of the Union. The winner of the plurality of the vote in each state wins that state's electors. How many electors each state receives is determined by its representation in Congress. For example, New York has 28 electoral votes because it has 26 members of the House of Representatives and 2 United States senators, which adds up to 28. It is not at all surprising that between 60 and 65% of Americans wish to replace the Electoral College system with a national popular vote for the presidency. Most Americans fear what is called an Electoral College misfire, which occurs when the winner of the national popular vote does not win the presidency because they failed to win a majority of the electoral votes, which is the only count that matters. This Electoral College misfire is not as uncommon as it once was. In 2 out of the last 6 presidential elections, going back to 2000, the popular vote winner has lost the presidential election. Shifting to a national popular vote would seem, at least at first blush, to be not only sensible, but necessary to ensure that our presidential elections accurately register the people's candidate preference. But before we leap to the ramparts to demand the overthrow of the Electoral College system, we should consider a handful of possible problems with a national popular election. First, should there be allegations of vote fraud or voting irregularities after the election, a national recount of over 154 million votes would be required. This could cause both an unacceptable delay in the determination of the new president and sow even more distrust in American elections. Second, many members of historically underrepresented groups congregate in so-called swing states, or states in which the contest between the two parties' candidates have been close in recent presidential elections. For example, almost 30% of the voters in Georgia are Black. And in Arizona, 18% of voters identify as Latino. The Electoral College thus can incentivize candidates to cater or at least listen to these subgroups' desires. Finally, a direct popular vote election would likely be much more media-centric. Candidates would likely concentrate on the major media markets, ignoring both rural areas and smaller cities. This would likely lead to even more outlandish campaigns and personal attacks. It would also cause candidates to neglect interests that are important outside of the metropoles. In conclusion, we should proceed with, if not caution, at least deliberation before we say goodbye to you, Electoral College. Again, this is Seyb. Thank you so much for joining me through this pilgrimage through the Electoral College system.